Hey everyone, so today's episode is basically going to be fixing in my wiring mess, and I'm going to show you how to install, or how I'm going to install this. Basically it's a fuse box, and it is a 4-port fuse box with mini blade fuses, so you can change the amperage for anything you plug in. Now the drawback to this is it isn't really waterproof or anything, so it does have to go somewhere that's not going to really get wet. And if you pressure wash your bike or anything like that, which you shouldn't do anyway, this is not a good idea. But this is what I'm going with because I always hand wash my bike, and we are going to run it in here and try and clean up some of this mess. This is what I've been waiting to get in order to finally finish cleaning this up. I am not going to bother recording me pulling all these wires out and getting them all sorted and everything for you. I'm going to get that done first, and then I'm going to show you how I'm mounting this and what I'm going to do to make it all work. And one thing I do want to point out with this box is it is a switched box. It has a built-in relay. So it has a third wire here, which you can actually put on an ignition source, which then turns this box on. So this way, anything I want extra to come on when the ignition is on will do so. Now, if you want this to always be on, you can actually just tap this in. You'd have to redo the connector, but tap it in and run it together with the power wire and it'll always be on. So I'm going to clean this up and then we are going to get started. Okay, now the only problem with this, and I thought I found a small enough one to use here, but mounting position is very hard, and the only place I found that it'll work, because it won't fit under here. It might if I didn't have my camera box under there, but for me, this is pretty much the only place I can find. The good news is the seat's going to hold it pretty firmly in place right here, so I don't really need to mount it with anything. You should, but I don't want it to rip up my stickers on here, so I will figure out a way to secure it better. But this is where I'm going to end up with the box. Now, the thing with my wiring is I have all these extra wires, so don't do this. I'm going to do it now because I ran out of these style connectors, at least in the size that I need. So I'm going to actually have to triple them up, and I'll replace them down the road eventually. I mean, it does work. The problem is it does leave this up more than it should, which as a result, you can short something out. So we are going to go ahead and assume the box is just going to go here, and we are going to run the wires there and there. Now, it has a lot of extra wire. If I had new ends, I would shorten this, but unfortunately I don't. So ultimately, we want this box to point this way because it's going to give us the best access to put the wires in. And we are going to actually have to cut this down a little bit so that the wires reach, because right now they won't reach. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and if you want to know, this goes to my camera, and this goes to my trickle charger. My negatives for everything else are actually on this bolt. So let's go ahead and do it. On your negative, you don't really need to worry about, which is why the negative does not have a cover. Now, it's going to go like this. Wires are going to... So right now, because I can't cut the wires, I'm having to figure out how I'm going to route them. We're just going to go in like this. This is a 10mm socket for the battery. Now the positive is going to be a little trickier because I have these extra wires in here. Like I said, it's better to actually splice all these into one larger connection. But we're going to go ahead and hook these up. Now be careful when you bolt down the positive. You don't want to short out on anything metal. Ah. Now, the safer way to do that would actually be to disconnect the negative, hook up the positive first, and then the negative. That way you don't short out on anything else metal. Make sure your connections are secure. And like I said, having this many here, this boot's not going to do well to protect. If you feel safer, you can take some electrical tape, which I'm going to do. Just take some electrical tape. And if you're afraid of hurting yourself, don't be. Touching positive and negative isn't going to hurt you unless you do it with a wrench or something of that sort. So I'm just going to put this electrical tape. It doesn't hold that well, but it just adds a little protection here under the boot. Just like that. If you wanted this to power on always, you would have had to wire this in with the positive. Okay, so if I actually flip this in here, you'll notice lights up. But because I am wiring on a triggered source, we are going to need to work with these wires. Now this wire right here is off of my USB accessory port. I have it spliced in right here with this blue connector. And anything that you use to trigger on, for example, my camera trigger is going to trigger on. That's what this other yellow wire here is. It goes to my camera. It doesn't draw much of anything. It's just basically a signal. So you can splice into anything that is accessory. Some people go directly into the fuse box. The problem with that is usually they go and run the wire up in and then push the cover over top. It's not a watertight seal. So you do risk water intrusion if you do that, which is why you end up with a lot of electrical gremlins on used bikes, because people do stuff like that. Now we need to basically join these three wires together. So this is my camera wire, this is the signal wire off my USB, and this is a signal wire for our connection here. And basically, I don't want a ton of excess, so I'm going to trim these a little shorter. Now it's good to have heat shrink tubing. Heat shrink tubing isn't going to help you too much with the when you have two wires, but every little bit helps. What I'm doing here is I'm joining these two yellow wires together, and I'm going to use one of these crimp connectors. How you join these wires is up to you. Whether you want to use crimp connectors like this, butt connectors, solder it. Soldering is by far the best choice. Now, before you crimp the other end on, remember to put your heat shrink tubing over the end. Like so. And for the single wire, when they're thin like this, best to bend over the tip. This helps keep it held in place. Feed it in and crimp it down. give it a tug, make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And before you actually heat shrink it, make sure your connection's good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the heat. I'm going to turn on my bike and this should light up. Just like that. So we're going to go ahead and use the heat gun and shrink this down. You can use, people use lighters, people use all kinds of things as long as it's heat. Now this is where soldering is better because you can use the proper size heat shrink tubing. I had to use a little bit big of a piece. So when you do this and your heat shrink tubing's a little too big for the small wires, just get some electrical tape, put it on the ends just to help keep moisture out. This is why soldering is also better. And I will probably come back and solder these connections later. But anything to help keep moisture out. Okay, I'm gonna tuck my excess wire in. And that should be good. Again, I'm gonna take care of this later. Once I get new connectors, I'll shorten the wire and all that. But now, we can go ahead and connect our accessories. So this is my lights, my LED lights. So the fuses in here, this is a 20 amp box. So right now, all of them are 5 amp fuses, which 5 amp is fine for this, and 5 amp is fine for this. This is just a USB port that I have run up front. It actually has a 7.5 amp fuse, so I can run a 5 amp and be safe. So we don't need a ton of extra wire here. So I'm just going to figure out how long I need it, cut it, and run it into the box. This would be better if the box was actually mounted down. I always like to leave a little extra in case I have to redo the connections. Red's positive, black is negative. Go ahead and strip the ends. You don't need to strip much. And you're going to need a small Phillips screwdriver. Loosen up the negative and the positive. Make sure to run the black wires to the negative and the red wires to the positive. Once you put a wire in, tighten it down, give it a tug, make sure it doesn't come out. Okay, now this has an inline fuse. Don't need it anymore because we have a fuse box. So again, going to figure out how much wire I need, cut it, strip it, loosen up the screws, black to negative, red to positive. There we go. Now, if I turn on my bike, my accessories that I just wired in should work. So right now there should be no power to them. Turn on the bike. Phone's charging. And my underglow is working, which I think you can see there. That is all there is to wiring this box. Again, I need to figure out a better way to mount this. Right there, it does fit under the seat. The seat will hold it. I need to get a connector to shorten the wires because you don't want this many run on the positive terminal. This is my little microphone to catch engine sound. So I got to clean that up. And it's not the cleanest right here with this right where it is, but it is better than it was. At least I think so. So now I have a 4-channel fused accessory black that I can wire stuff into. I know this wasn't the best tutorial because everyone's application is going to be different. Where you find to fit it might be different. But hopefully that gives you an idea. And again, this box isn't perfect for fitment, but it was the smallest one that did what I want, where it is a relayed box. So it gets triggered when the power comes on. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Keep the rubber side down. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I will try and answer everyone's questions as soon as possible. If there's anything you would like to see, any tips, tricks, techniques, anything at all motorcycle related, please let me know. I do these videos for you, so anything that you would like to see, I am more than happy to do it. If you like this video, please click that thumbs up button. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and click the bell to notify you whenever a new video drops. Thank you again. Ride safe and keep the rubber side down.